people know that for me, Summer with Coldwater has actually been in the works for 6 years. The first time I heard about this ministry was in 2016. I was in a Christian adventure leadership development program, and we were on a canoe trip in the Florida Everglades. One of the other participants was sharing his testimony, how he came to accept Jesus, and an integral part of his story was his trips with Coldwater, Canada as a teenager. I was mesmerized by the fact that a Christian ministry existed that had a focus on faith and leadership development through canoe tripping, as canoeing was a long-time hobby and family tradition in my life. I have fond memories of weeks spent in Algonquin Park every summer with my dad and my brother, who are here tonight. My desire and interest in wilderness tripping is originally thanks to them, and all the time they put into tripping with a 7-year-old, which I imagine was not easy. So I appreciate your patience. As my friend shared his testimony, he talked about pushing himself through challenging terrain, reaching new heights and making good friends. But the part of his adventures with Coldwater that stood out the most was the instructor that came alongside him, guiding him through spiritual and moral questions, and even staying connected as a mentor after the trip. Although captivated by the idea of the ministry, God had other adventures for me over the last 6 years before I could come and experience Coldwater for myself. In short, Coldwater was sprinkled throughout the last 6 years in ways I didn't realize till now. And all along, God had a plan to fill the desire in my heart to use wilderness experiences to build into the lives of young people. I stayed good friends with the person who originally told me about Coldwater, and often asked him about his experiences over and over again. For the next 3 years, I also often bumped into Michelle, Coldwater's program manager. We bumped into each other at youth conferences where she was promoting summer programs. We would stop and chat, and she'd tell me all about how amazing Coldwater is. But still, it wasn't yet time for me to join the team myself. In the fall of 2019, it was then my first time to experience a trip with Coldwater. A ministry that I was serving on did a partnership trip with Coldwater. Although it was short and sweet, Although it was short and sweet, I was so inspired by how the instructors led the trip and cared for our students, and many of them are in this room today too. My desire to be a part of the Coldwater community continued to grow. After that trip, I knew I wanted to explore the option of working for Coldwater. So then, on March 13th of 2020, I sat in a Starbucks with Michelle and asked her an abundance of questions about Coldwater. I left that meeting with a hopeful feeling that my time with Coldwater was coming near. It was going to be that summer. And then as I'm driving home, I hear on the radio that the NBA has been canceled and that students get a 2-week March break. In case you missed the last 2-3 years, there was a pandemic, and summer programs did not run that summer, and that was not my summer to be with Coldwater. 2021 rolled around, and yet again, God had other plans for my summer. I continued to meet people from school, church, and social events that had had experiences with Coldwater, and I wished the same for myself. That summer, I got to experience my first for real trip with Coldwater, the women's trip. It was an amazing experience, and I continued to want to join the Coldwater team as a staff member. Finally, in 2022, through the help of my co-op director at Redeemer University, who is also here tonight, my dream job and my dream summer came to pass. Not only did I get to join the Coldwater team, but I got a school credit for it too. As mentioned, there are multiple reasons why this summer experience with Coldwater hadn't come sooner, including other commitments and God's perfect timing. But I'm so grateful that this was this summer with this team. But it is important to note a significant factor to why it took so long. I could claim that it was all of these reasons, but honestly it was more. Despite being told by peers and mentors outside of Coldwater that they could see me as an instructor, I told myself that I wasn't good enough for it. Whether physical ability, spiritual maturity, or leadership skill, I had convinced myself that I wasn't right for the team, despite my desires. It was on the first morning we had students arrive on site in July when I realized that this narrative I had created and how important it was to tear it down. Matt, our Coldwater director, was leading us in worship. Who You Say I Am, strung out of the guitar and echoed in chorus by the room filled with students and staff. It was in that moment that I had realized who I had told myself I wasn't who God says I am. And who am I to say God is wrong? I looked back on the previous 6 years and reflected on all the times God had motioned me towards Coldwater, and all the times I had crossed my arms and said, I can't. I'm so glad that I was wrong. For the next 3 months, a resounding I can echoed through 764 kilometers of headwinds and tailwinds, mountaintops and valleys, laughter and tears, journal pages, prayers, well-worn Bibles that were often wet, in song, and in every single one of the students that I got to lead. I can. I can because of God's strength and joy that sustains me. Thank you.